So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I will drop our icebreaker into the chat, and we're just going to ask for your name, hub or agency, and then we will also be asking if you could travel back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? So if anybody would like to drop theirs in the chat, I will go ahead and read a couple, and really excited to see what you guys write. I think you guys always have such good creative ones. Diane Reed from PSU, have more fun. I love that. See. Michelle from Lane, wear sunscreen. That's a great one. Yes, Michelle, I completely agree. Rod from Eastern Oregon Early Learning Hub, don't grow up. Adulting is hard. Very much so. Yes, completely agree. Begonia, United Way of the Columbia Willamette, Early Learning Washington County. It enters one year and comes out the other. That's perfect. I'll do one more. Abby from Northwest Early Learning Hub, get more sleep. Yes, I think we need to appreciate the naps and all of the things that we can squeeze in. So those are great ones. And I encourage everyone to always just continue to read the fun answers to the icebreaker in the chat. And we will go ahead and get started with our agenda. So I will pass it over to Nancy.
Thanks, Maria. Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Hout, one of the Early Learning Hub coordinators, along with Maria. And we're going to get started today with Diane Reed with the PSU evaluation team. Diane?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it will work. All right. Okay, can you see that? All righty. So I'm Diane Reed and I work at Portland State University at the Center for Improvement of Child and Family Services. And I've been on the KPI evaluation team for like 8 years, 9 years, a long time. It's been a long time. I wasn't there right at the beginning, but I've been on it for a really long time. And my colleagues, who most of you know, Isabella Ginsburg and Dr. Beth Green, are on the KPI project team with me. They couldn't be here today for various reasons. So you get me, even though I'm sure most of you connect most frequently with Isabella. So Nancy and Maria just asked that I come and do sort of a quick overview of the types of evaluation support and resources that we provide, just to remind people, tell new people, get a little bit of FaceTime, have a little bit of conversation about what else we might want to do live with, all of the interested parties. So that's my plan. So the main sort of buckets of support that our PSU team provides for the hubs with the KPI work is that we have and maintain a KPI website. And a lot of the resources are on there, and I'll pull that up in a minute. For those of you who've been around since the OCF P3 days, we used to maintain a site for each funded group, and then we sort of decided like, oh, let's just bring it all into one spot. We also have regularly scheduled meetings and check-ins. We do on-demand support, and then we provide like ongoing reminders. So we'll start with a KPI site. And I'm just going to go through these bullets, and then I'll actually pull it up and kind of show you where things live. Most of you have probably seen it, but just in case. So we use the KPI site to have a place where you can go and check on timelines, like due dates. There's instructions there. If you're like, wait, I remember when I started, somebody said XYZ. What was XYZ? We try to have sort of like the primer information on the site. All of the data entry links for outcome surveys. So when you administer or your partners administer outcome surveys at KPI funded events, if they do a paper survey, that's where they do the data entry. We also summarize your data and post it there for you. And then we also have like project resources. So all of the current PDFs of surveys, all the reports, training materials, and then our team's contact information. So I'm going to, can you see the site? All right, great. Okay, so this is the site. There's now only one site. And this is when you first go there, this is the web page. And up here is where you tell us if you want an electronic survey. That is the reason most people go to the site. So we just put it front and center. And it has some instructions. Here are the due dates. And then it has some survey links for when you're completing surveys. Isabella does most of the maintenance on this site. So up here, this, you can go to your hub if you're going to enter survey data. And that will take you to the current year's links. Outcome survey data summaries. Open this. Each hub has their own file folder, and I'm going to open Blue Mountain. I'm not going to show you the actual data, but just so you can see what's in it in case you haven't seen it for some reason. So in here is these are all PDFs of the data that we receive from Blue Mountain every year that they've participated in the evaluation. It's all there for you. Data summaries from the dawn of time. And then we also, because of the way that we, as many of you know, we do once a year data summary where we table all of the data by the different response categories. And then I guess it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we asked if there was sort of a hub specific way that you wanted us to slice and dice the data. And most often it was either by like strategy or school district. So let's say your KPI dollars are used for 2 different kinder transition activities. Usually you wanted to see like, okay, well, what is the data for kinder transition activity 1 and what's the data for kinder transition activity 2? So we would divide that, or you would be like, we do Ready for K everywhere, but we want to see it by 6 school districts. So every year we table all of the data here for you, and then in the Google links, so this is a list of all of the Google links, you have where you can go, you can see your raw data in its entirety, and then there's there's like data summaries embedded in there, and we do pivot tables for like some demographic information, and then we repeat that over and over again based on how you have asked us to slice and dice it. So anyways, in your hub folder are those 2 resources. Okay, I'm gonna pause. I feel like I just said a million words. Any questions about that? So there's a folder for each hub. One for Dell. Okay. Anybody? Are we all good? I can only select 3 of you, so I apologize. And then there's this. So there's outcomes data entry, outcomes data summaries, project resources. So this is where the project surveys are. So you can go and download any surveys you need. There's also KPI reports, which this has to be updated to reflect the Dell branding. So that's not available right now. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And then there's all of the historical KPI reports. So if you're ever like, hey, I remember reading something a couple years ago that said this, all of our reports are here. And then we've also started to kind of build out this training and tip sheets page so that as you're supporting your partners, you have some sort of resources at your fingertips to help them understand the somewhat complicated KPI data collection process. So this is a flow chart of when to administer surveys. This is a video of Isabella explaining the data collection process, and it's really made for partners. So it's kind of like simplified, high level. And then we also link the peer learning folder in here. And then there's our contact info. So that is like the quick and dirty on the KPI side.
Yeah, Diane, I see
Uh-huh.
a question in the chat
Oh, I
from
can't see the chat, sorry.
Eastern Oregon. I think it's Rod asks, are the electronic outcome surveys Google-based or Qualtrics?
Qualtrics. So the electronic surveys that you administer, so when you're shared a link to give the link to participants, that's in Qualtrics. If you collect a paper survey, the survey data place where you input that data, that is a Google form. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Diane, I'm curious, is it possible to set up those surveys in a Google format? I've done that and families really struggle Qualtrics over with their cell phone. It's just not very user friendly on a cell
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah, we could definitely look at options for the survey platform. Qualtrics is what we use for most of our surveys, and it does have like a cell phone friendly option. But to be entirely honest, we never did electronic surveys before the pandemic. And this, it sort of like forced us to. And so all of a sudden we went from having one link for a survey to having to generate like hundreds of them every year. So we spent a lot of time generating surveys in Qualtrics, and I'm not sure that we really had like a critical eye towards the formatting on the phone. But we can definitely talk about any ways that would make it more user-friendly for people taking it. I think the Google site, the way that we have it set up now, the administrative questions are, they're embedded so that you would only have one link to do data entry regardless of where the survey came from. So we just have to problem solve a little bit around that. Does that help, Rod?
Yeah.
Well, we could also look at Qualtrics and how we make sure that it's working well. Any other questions?
Diane, I see Begonia asks, can you please grant us access to see the reports?
Which reports?
The ones that you are showing.
So if you can't access anything on here, it should have a way for you to request access. So you wouldn't have access to, Begonia, you wouldn't have access to the Blue Mountain reports. It should only have access to the Washington County reports.
Right,
Yes.
and that's the one that I requested permission.
Okay,
So it says
great.
that you have to grant me the permission.
Yes. So yes, if you hire new staff, you can just send us an email, we can add them, but we do have restricted access because the data on there, you do have access to raw data, and we do not clean there's not like highly sensitive information in there, but the qualitative portion of the surveys, people write a lot of different things, and they often include names, and we want to make sure that it's your data, but we want to make sure that anybody who stumbles across it does have access to it. So yes, if you request it from us, we get a ping that will tell us to give you access. All right. Any other site questions now, or shall we push on to other resources?
Just wanting, Rod, did you want to read your oh, sorry. I'm looking at an old comment. Keep going, Diane. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I like it to be conversational. Okay. All righty. So, okay, so here is part of something that's available on the KPI site. So a few years ago, 6 years ago, so 5 years ago, we asked all of you or your predecessors what they wanted. And one of the things that you wanted was a really like plug and play report for you to take the data summaries that we give you and to be able to like create a 2-page brief of the findings. So I just took a screenshot of it. So, but this is a part of a 2-page report. Here's another part of it. that we paid somebody who does graphic design to make it really, really pretty. And then we have a 2-page instruction sheet that tells you how to come in and like plug your numbers into this. And so some of the instructions are like embedded in here, like insert your logo there. You know, you would rename it here to be what, you know, ready for K in X hub. And then this says you can write whatever you want here, but it has some information on how to keep sort of that crisp professional look. And then, so we develop these, there's one for family engagement, kinder transition activities, and there's one for shared professional development. So we are going through to update all of the things that refer to ELD, and then we'll post them on the site this week. So that's an example of one of the resources that was requested and we generated and shared out then, but I don't know how often they've been used. Here is the KPI theory of change that's also on the site with the report. So anything that's sort of generated through the evaluation in partnership with DELC and the hubs, we're trying to make sure that it all goes there. If ever you can't find something and you're like, I know that Diane or Isabella said that we had this, just email us. We're very accessible. We love to hear from you. We love to partner with you. And if you have a hard time accessing a folder or when you download something, it's funky, just let us know because we can easily send stuff over email. So the KPI side is where we try to put everything that we think people are going to want and need. So the second kind of main area of support that we provide is our regularly scheduled meetings. So we've been doing it twice a year. It used to be like 4 times a year, and it seemed like that was a little bit too much for everybody just logistically. And we have sort of our set agenda. Last time we did it we did it with Maria and Nancy. We just like attended one of their meetings, which we thought worked pretty well. We always like to hear updates from you, what you guys are working on. We sort of check the data flow, like have we seen the surveys we thought we were going to see, or did something get sidelined? We want to provide opportunities for you to regularly sort of have FaceTime with us and to ask questions or clarify something, or if you're like, oh, this came up and it felt like it wasn't entirely clear how we should hold this KPI investment within the evaluation work. So we like to have those regular meetings to do that, have that conversation in that space with you. We also tend to talk about upcoming evaluation work, and we always like to ask, like, well, what do you need? What can we do? And then if we hear it enough, like for example, the peer learning groups, that was something that we heard for a couple of years during those check-ins, and then we can do our part to support it coming into fruition with DELC partners as well. And then we also do on-demand support, as many of you know. So if you need something, email us, and Isabella and I can almost always meet pretty quickly to help you figure something out. So if something is confusing, or you don't know where it fits, or you can't remember, you know, you had your onboarding training and it made sense in the moment, but 6 months have gone by, and what, you know, you're like, what did they say then? I don't remember. We're happy to walk you through it. We're happy to go through your first program survey with you. Whatever it is that you need, we try to be available, and we provide a lot of one-on-one support every quarter. And we like it, we enjoy it. So don't be shy. We want you to remember to call us, email us if you need something, or if you're just like, this isn't working, like this doesn't work on an Android, and be like, oh, well, we didn't know. Thank you for telling us. Let's figure it out together. And we always do onboarding support. So if you have new staff at your hub or new partners, let us know. We're happy to do the training for them. We do have the video on the site to watch, but you know, it's just really nice to hear something twice or to be able to ask clarifying questions live. And so we often attend meetings just to do that, like, welcome to the world of KPI. What can we answer for you? And then, of course, when you request surveys, we generate them. I feel like Isabella tends to have a 2 or 3 day turnaround. So when you request the survey, she generates it, and then she'll send it back to the person who's administering it. If you're a hub that requests a lot of surveys, she also maintains an Excel spreadsheet that tracks all of the links and the projected administration date. So like if you're a hub that asks for 30 different surveys in a year, we like to have a place to kind of manage that with you so that there is no confusion, the wrong link doesn't go out. So we do a lot of that kind of support, strategic support. And then the data summary. So we do the data summaries at the end of the like fiscal year evaluation year, always, no matter what. But we also will summarize your data for you whenever you need it. So if you have a governance meeting coming up, or you have a facilitator who's really eager to get feedback about something they did, just let us know the data are in. Just give us an email, give us a call, say, hey, XYZ activity is done, all the data's in, like, can we see that summarized? And we say, of course, we'd love to get that to you so you can use it. And it usually takes a couple of days, but we can usually crank that out for you pretty quickly. If you know, like Northwest Regional, like every year their programming would end at a certain time, and 2 months later, they always had a big governance process. We just got into a rhythm of knowing like, okay, this week we're going to be pulling those data and summarizing it. So just keep in mind that while we have our annual like work that we do with the data that we get for DELC, we're always here to summarize and make your data accessible and understandable for you. But we just don't know when things close unless you tell us. So, and that I would say that's probably our other like one-on-one hub TA, and doing the on-demand data summaries are kind of our biggest lift or privilege. And then we also have some like ongoing reminders that we just set up to help everybody remember, because we know you're busy and KPI is a small part of what you do. We do have calendar invites for data deadlines, and it sends you a reminder a week ahead of time. That was requested. We try to maintain those. If you have new staff or new partners you want to add to it, or you want us to add to it, just let us know. And we also do, Isabella is really, really good at doing group and individual emails for people who have requested it, or we know like, oh, you know, so-and-so at Hub Y, we know that they had a program that ended, but we didn't see any of their data. I'm like, where's the data? It's the end of the year. So I know some of you have received those lovely emails from her. So that's the other main thing that we do to support your KPI evaluation work. And I think that's it, except for we've also been kicking around other ways we might be able to support you, and things that have come up are like having an office hour where we just like are on Zoom and anybody can pop in with any question anytime, not having to schedule it, or having like a training calendar that's like set up for the year with specific training topics, because we know that like there's always new people coming on, and instead of having to do like on-demand onboarding, we could say like, oh, well, you know, there's going to be a KPI evaluation training twice a year, and you can attend it or send your partners or whatever. So those were two things that have come up, but we haven't implemented it yet. And I think I'm out of time and breath.
Right. Diane, you're doing great for time. Does
Okay.
anybody have any questions?
Diane, I'm just curious, that wonderful one pager that you show, is that, can you customize that one pager by region, or is that one for everybody?
Well, so it's set up here. Let me pull it up for you. So I'll show you how it works. Okay, can you see this? This one?
Yes.
Okay, so this was made for Hub staff to take and just like plug and play their information. If you want something else and don't feel comfortable, like let's say you want to have a picture that's not like a photo stock picture, you want to use a picture from your, the communities that you serve, you could change that out. But if you don't know how to change pictures, we could help you do that. There is I don't have it here. There is a instruction sheet that goes with this that tells you how to tailor it to your programming. So, I should have brought an example here and just kind of done it live, but you would change the program name, you would define the region, and then you would say here, Washington County Early Learning Hub is partnering with partner to do blah 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 at this school, hospital, church. And then you might do like a 2-sentence description. You might want to include funding. And this just says here's the information that you need to fill this out. This is all instructions that are just embedded in here. And then here it says, here's a quote. So you can just paste from your qualitative data a quote that's Susie Q says I feel so much more confident in supporting my child with learning to read, or whatever quote it is that you think is going to hook the people that you think you might share this with. And then this is kind of canned stuff like the research. And then these numbers can all be updated to reflect your data. And we summarize your data in a way that should feed into this. And same here, these are all the measures on the outcome survey. And it's very easy so this is all formatted in a really nice, pretty way, but in the document, you can just right click on it and say edit data, and you could put your data in here. And we summarize your data like this, so you can easily say oh, for us, it was 96. For us, it was 72, whatever. And then this is the part that we need to update because it's no longer ELD. But yes, so this can be tailored for your hub and your program. And we also have one for professional development. So it's a really nice way to tell people about the KPI work that you're doing. Now, if you wanted to try this and you were having a hard time tailoring it, we would be more than happy to help walk you through it. Stop share so I can see people. Hello.
Diane, I also just wanted to point out the shout out from Rod. Diane, by the way, Isabel is amazing. Just want to make sure you pass that along.
Oh, we know. No doubt about it. She's only not here because she was getting married last weekend and I told her she wasn't allowed to work.
That's great. Doesn't look like there are any other questions, but as Diane said, PSU is super responsive, and she and Isabella are happy to connect at any time for technical assistance or whatever questions you have. So thank you, Diane.
It was my pleasure. I'm sure I'll be seeing some of you again soon, and I'll hop off and you guys can go on about your meeting. All right. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
And next up, we've got Karina to talk about the Oregon Kitchen Table community engagement. I'm really looking forward to this. Karina?
Yeah. I was getting a little nervous. I thought, is Sarah here? So I think she just hopped on. Good afternoon, everyone. Karina Guzman Ortiz, she, her pronouns for everyone once more. It's great to be back. I know I've been here before with Lauren, who's also here on the call, I believe, but we've joined over the last few months to provide updates around, what it is that our plan to develop the Birth through 5 literacy plan is, and then share a little bit about our engagement efforts. So back in the spring, a couple months ago, I ran some small groups with providers specifically, and that was the first part of our engagement. So that was the part that we kind of led internally, but we've been working on getting a contract with Oregon's Kitchen Table, who is housed over at PSU. And I've been boasting about them for some time because this was the plan that we had in mind from the beginning. And so just eager to get this work going. We have Sarah here today who will introduce herself. But Oregon's Kitchen Table will be handling kind of the fall engagement. So we're working with them to plan, what it is, like the different questions, and then they'll be supporting us with the facilitation and convening people. But we also just thought that this was a great opportunity for all of you to hear directly from the Oregon's Kitchen Table team around upcoming dates, get to know them. And I just, kind of do this warm handoff from our end. I do think it'll be a great opportunity for you all to share, and we'll be reaching out to other early learning system partners, but to share around, your ideas, priorities, needs, for the Birth Through 5 literacy plan and the initiative, the investments, and do so also with the third party. So you're probably also sometimes sick of talking to us as DELC staff, and we thought that this would be a good opportunity also for there to be a third party that you could just be, as candid as possible, and that will be really helpful for us. So they'll interpret that information and provide a report to us in November so that we can complete and finalize our Birth Through 5 plan and submit to the legislature in December. So I would kindly hand it over to Sarah. I see you. I don't know if Megan's with us today, but please introduce yourself and let us know what you got.
Yeah, thanks, Karina. The rest of our team is not here. I said I'd handle this one as they've got other things going on. So thanks for having us. I know some of you we've had in some of our other projects with DELC, especially around the kindergarten transition and the new early learning transition check-in last spring. So appreciate seeing some faces we recognize. We're working on wrapping up the report from that, so hopefully that'll be shared pretty soon. As Karina said, Oregon's Kitchen Table is a program housed at Portland State University, and we create ways for people in Oregon to impact and influence decisions that affect their everyday lives. So we are working this fall with Karina and Lauren and other folks from DELC to hear input from early learning partners and community groups that support families with children ages birth through 5 on what could be most helpful in helping those children develop early literacy skills. In the spring, we worked with ODE on their early literacy for children ages K and up. So we're doing a second round with the birth through 5 groups. And we've got some activities, as Karina said, starting about October 15th through November 15th, to hear both from families with children in that age group, as well as early learning partners and community groups. And so I have a couple slides to share. Am I able to? Yeah, I can, if that's okay. Is that all right? Okay. Just give me a second. Now I've got to find all my, here we go. So Karina and Lauren, I don't know, I don't know how much you all have talked about the Birth Through 5 literacy plan. I don't want to repeat anything you all might have already talked about.
We've shared some, and I'm not quite sure if there's new folks here as well. I think I don't want to assume, but
right,
I'd be okay to do a quick overview.
Okay, it'll be quick. So quick background. Oops, it's not letting me go forward for some reason. There we go. So in 2022, the state legislature passed a bill called the Early Literacy Success Initiative. And there are 4 components of that. One is for schools, K-12 schools. One is for community-based groups who work with K through 10-year-olds. Another is for tribes for language revitalization. And then the fourth piece of this initiative directs the Department of Early Learning and Care to develop a Birth Through 5 literacy plan. And the intention is that that plan will offer ways for early childhood partners to support literacy for children ages birth through 5, as well as some community groups who support families to help their children develop those language, early writing, and listening skills. So that's my very brief overview. So this October through November, DELC is partnering with us to hear from early learning partners and community groups, as well as families, about what people would like to see included in the plan. And input from these different activities is going to help DELC create that plan, which they'll provide to the state legislature in December. And then the legislature will make decisions about funding for birth through 5 literacy in spring 2025 for the next biennium. So what we're hoping to hear about as we do the engagement activities is what people see as working well to support children ages birth through 5 to develop literacy skills, what's already happening, what's the good work that folks are doing that people would like to see more of or to sustain, what activities people would like to see more of in their communities to help children develop those early literacy skills. It could be programs, it could be activities, it could be materials, what people feel like is needed. And then what topics related to birth through 5 literacy are people interested in learning about or providing training for staff? So particularly for folks who are early learning partners who either themselves participate in training and learning more, or folks who provide training for staff on early literacy. And then finally, what kinds of supports or resources that folks would like to see from DELC and other partners to be able to offer and improve literacy programming that you're interested in. Sorry, there's a sunlight is right in my face here this afternoon. So these are kind of the discussions and topics that we'll be asking folks about in different ways. So upcoming opportunities to give input, we will have an online survey in multiple languages for both families and early learning partners. That'll start October 15th. We don't yet have the exact link for it since it's still being translated and programmed, but that's kind of the landing page link there, and I can put it in the chat when that's available. And then we'll be holding some community conversations for early learning partners and community groups. We have 3 scheduled that folks are welcome to attend. Hopefully they're at convenient times. And I can put those links in the chat too, where we'll be having about an hour or so discussion on those topics to hear from you and hear from each other. We really enjoy having those kinds of meetings because people will often build off of each other and come up with ideas that they might not just have on their own. And then of course, if you're not able to make one of these and you want to be part of a discussion, reach out to us. We always are happy to do individual interviews or see about organizing another conversation. If there's a table that you're aware of or part of that you think, oh, this group would be really interested in talking about this, we're happy to see if we can join in during that time frame. And then we also work with community organizers who gather input from families in their own communities in whatever way is most comfortable for them. So those are the different approaches we'll be taking over the next month, starting mid-October. And would love to have some places where we can connect with you all as early learning hubs, your partners, and other folks that you think would be interested in this. And I think that's all I have. Karina or Lauren, is there anything we're missing?
I believe you covered it. I'd love to just see if folks had general questions, reflections, or anything that we needed to kind of circle back on to make sure that we're kind of on the same page. So thanks for that run through, Sarah. Yeah, and if you have links, I think putting them in the chat would be great, but we'll also make sure that Marie and Nancy have the dates, so we can share those out as well. And I would love to reiterate the last part that you stated there, Sarah, around the flexibility between you and Megan around making sure that folks who are interested in having a conversation, even if these dates don't align, I know they've been super flexible with us in collaboration in the past. So just please do take them up on that opportunity, and we'll keep working on this. Look forward to coming back in the future also just to kind of give a summary of what it is that we heard, and then of course providing an ongoing updates on the development of the Birth Through 5 literacy plan as we can.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Sarah and Lauren. I know you're on the call as well. We really appreciate your work and sharing this out with the hub directors. Let's see, next up, we have Jennifer and Mady with the Baby Promise waitlist exemption. Jen and Mady? Let me see if they're here.
Pivot for you all today. Hold on just
There you
a
are.
second. I'll pull up a PowerPoint we have. And if you could let me know if you can see the screen, I hope it's showing up for y'all.
Yes, that looks great.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Jen Eras. I'm lead policy analyst with the Child Care Assistance Program for DELP. I haven't really had the opportunity to make it to too many of these meetings. I don't know if you've seen me kind of pop in here and there. I try to show up when I can. But just wanted to share a little bit of information with you guys today about our baby promise exemption that we'll be adding into rule actually a little bit later on this month. See if I can get this to advance.
Jennifer, you're cutting out a little bit. That's
I'm gonna go ahead and keep my camera off because that seems to my husband's on a competing meeting with me right now, so we seem to be taking up quite a bit of bandwidth. I can switch over my audio, but is this any better?
yeah, I think this is sounding better. Thanks.
And I can also turn up my settings. Okay. So basically the information we wanted to share today is about like just basic baby promise program information about how the ERDC waitlist has actually impacted this program, and also the options that we have in place to try and remedy that, along with some of the steps that we've taken to to try and remedy some of the issues so far. So Baby Promise is a current program. It had started out as a pilot, but it is only in 6 counties and the city of Reedsport. So we have that one little exception for Reedsport. But these are the areas where the Baby Promise program is running and where we have enrollment partners as well as the providers that are helping to support the families in these areas. So as far as Baby Promise, I had mentioned a little bit earlier, it started out as a pilot, but then we did get the funding and the authority and statute for it to be considered a program. As you can see I'm not going to read everything on the timeline here, but as you can see, this is kind of where we've rolled along in this so far. And then when we started the enrollment in 2020, things were going great. And then there were some changes that happened to the program. So that we don't actually have that listed out in here. But some of the key things to know about the program is that originally the eligibility for the program was not run, it wasn't connected to the ERDC program. The enrollment partners actually provided the eligibility for the child care or for the families, and it was completely disconnected from the ERDC program. But as you recall from that previous map, if we had families that had moved from one of those regions to another region, we were running into issues with guaranteeing 12-month eligibility for those families. And so that's when we made a pivot and we started covering the base payment for Baby Promise under the employment related daycare program. And then there was a supplemental payment that went to the providers through the enrollment partners to cover those additional funds that were needed per child. And that was all great and wonderful. However, we didn't foresee at that point in time that we would have an ERDC waitlist that would be coming up. So what we had seen with the ERDC program is there had been dropping enrollment up until COVID. We had definitely some waivers in the program through COVID, and then we had quite a few changes to the program with federal funding. But we didn't foresee the caseload growth that we have had in the last few years. So there wasn't a built-in exemption. So in November, it was November 3rd, 2023, we implemented the ERDC waitlist. And then we're coming up to the point right here where right now we have the Baby Promise program, which covers children aged 6 weeks to 3 years. And with time, those kids are aging out of the program. And so that's that's become a little bit of an issue with the program. So right now we're at the point where we do have ERDC eligibility as a requirement for any families that are going into the Baby Promise program. At this point in time, we don't have an exemption for the families. So we either have to have families who are currently eligible for ERDC or families who meet a bypass in some other way for the wait list. We are working on, we've actually started the process to get a temporary Oregon administrative rule in place. It'll go in place on the 16th of this month. And within that rule, we're adding Baby Promise as a bypass to the wait list. And just as a reminder for folks, the bypasses that we've had, several of them we've had in place for a very, very long time. But we have families who are reapplying for ERDC within 2 months. They can bypass a wait list. Folks who are receiving or who have currently received TANF and TABBS benefits can bypass the wait list. And then we've had a child welfare exemption where we receive exemptions from child welfare employees, essentially stating that child care is needed for a child to either remain in their home, be returned to their home, or be placed with a known adult. And we've had a teeny tiny little exemption that doesn't do, it doesn't cover a whole lot of families, but we've had an exemption for children who are in Head Start and early Head Start contracted slots. And that's been a longstanding practice of I say our agency, but ODHS and DELC to have that bypass to support those contracts. So we had it with Head Start, early Head Start. Back probably about 8 or 9 years ago, we had Oregon Programs of Quality that were, those were some contracted slots that we had a bypass for the wait list as well. But we just didn't have it in place for Baby Promise. So we've got a temporary rule change going into effect, like I said, on October 16th. And then what we're looking at right now is because Baby Promise is that time limited age range where kids can participate, we've got quite a few kids that are aging out of the slot this coming fall. And so we've made some really great progress in helping to expand options for families and expand infant toddler care. The fact that this is no longer a pilot and it's actually a program, that's great, but we really need to make sure we don't lose ground. We don't want to see this program fail because of the oversight of not having that exemption for Baby Promise. So also just to note, one of the things that we did do is we have quite a few families on the ERDC program who have open ERDC benefits, but they're not connected to providers. And so we did look at that population to find families who had children who were age eligible in those regions. The enrollment coordinators, they partnered with, I believe it was the local ODHS offices, to reach out to those families to see if this was something they were interested in. So we did try to see if there was a way to recruit families that are currently eligible, but we just, we weren't able to fill those slots. I think we were successful in filling a few, but not nearly as many as we had hoped. And I got a little ahead of my slides. So yeah, this is where we're at here. When we talked to those families, these are some of the reasons that they gave for why they weren't either interested or why they weren't connected to a child care provider with their open ERDC benefit. We know this is not an all-inclusive list, and like I said, this is a very targeted population based on region and also having a child that's under 3 years old. but just as a little side note to that, this current month, actually, we're going to do a quick pulse survey with the families that are not connected to providers to get a little bit more information from a larger swath of the population who are not connected. And then there were some of these reasons where it was actually several families who had given the same response. As someone who was a parent with childcare needs living in a very rural area, the lack of transportation or distance to like regulated childcare can be a huge issue in some of those rural areas as well. And so this is kind of where we've landed as far as we made the attempts to try and fill those slots with the populations we had. And we weren't able to. So this is our list of the current exemptions, which I already went over a little in advance. And then this is just the addition that we'll be adding in to add for those families with infants and toddlers that are being placed in a baby promise slot. And I'm sorry, I have not been watching the chat, so I will take a look at that in just a second, and then we'll go over some more. So as far as the process for how families will get connected, essentially they'll be identified by the enrollment partner first. So those are the partners in those areas who have feet on the ground and they're talking to those families. So that's how they'll be identified. We did recently create essentially it's a referral form. So it's the ODHS 0860 is the form number, but those forms contain all the information that the enrollment partner will need to fill out in order to allow that family to bypass the wait list. So this is very similar to our child welfare exemption, where we require a referral form in order to bypass the wait list for those families. So when they apply for ERDC, they'll provide that form, and then ODHS will continue to do the eligibility. Once the family receives that notice that their eligibility has been processed, then they'll make sure that the enrollment partner knows that, and they'll get them connected up with that either regional wait list or the baby promise slot that they're in. And then those providers are also listed with the ERDC program. So our direct aid unit will make that connection for the base subsidy payment. I'm just going to take a quick peek at the chat here because I feel like I'm going to get a little bit behind on these if I don't. What's the future of baby? That's a big question. My goodness, I shouldn't start with that one. But I mean, ideally, our hopes are that we would have this statewide. Having a program that does really great things, but only in a few regions is not, that's not the dream. That's not the goal. This would be something that we would love to see expanded. But like I said, we really don't want to lose ground with what we have so far. We know it's a tiny program. It's tiny but mighty, working with some of our littlest Oregonians. And so we're really hoping that can be something that will be available in more areas. And then how many slots are available now? I believe we had about 72 kids that were aging out. I don't know if all of the slots were filled, and I'm not sure about the breakdown as to where those kids are in those 3 regions. So we can definitely follow up with a little more specific information on that. I'm not sure what that comment was. So Evan, if you'd like to clarify what what your question would be, that would be great.
Yeah, like total number, like what's the total number of slots or kids, like the N number?
Yeah, I believe it's right around 140 something, and honestly, it might be a little further on in this presentation. But it's been a little while since I reviewed it, and I was not actually planning on being the one to give the presentation today. So we'll find out if it's in there. I want to say it's about 140, but for some reason that number isn't quite feeling great in my mind right now. So we can definitely follow up and get that information.
No, thank you. And the other thing, I was reflecting on the comments you collected about people were maybe staying home with their kids, and with the implementation of paid leave Oregon, maybe like a future looking thing is how we would work with paid leave Oregon to identify folks who are on paternity and maternity leave and when that might be ending, and then they could kind of have a supported process moving into a program like Baby Promise. Because obviously, if you're on leave, it's rarely going to be long enough, and so then you could be kind of dovetail two really fantastic programs to work super hand in glove with each other.
Yeah, and there were recent enhancements made to the ERDC program where families where the either one or both of the caretakers are on parental leave, they are able to first initially qualify for ERDC benefits, which before that just wasn't an option. Families either had to be actively participating in employment or education, but now if they're on medical leave from employment, that's treated the same as if they were employed. So yeah, it is interesting to see what paid leave Oregon is doing. I think we have a lot more people that are potentially staying on maternity and paternity or parental leave for longer periods of time than what we had in the past. And like I said, a lot of the comments, they resonate. I mean, if I'm home, I'm going to have my kids with me. I don't necessarily want to send them somewhere else. So I get it. But yeah, it was really interesting to see those comments, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of the full survey that is going to happen. I think we'll have a finalized report for that full survey in about January. So like I said, we're going to start reaching out to families this month, and then we'll have to analyze all the data and get that report pulled together. And the exemption process, I mean, it's a pretty simple referral form. So as long as we've got a family that looks like they may qualify for ERDC, meaning that they have the employment or education piece, and they have a child that's the right age, then our processing timeframes for ERDC eligibility are up to 45 days, but it doesn't necessarily take that long, depending on the biggest part is if the family turns in all of the verification that's needed and schedules their intake interview. Oh, and that's a great question. So Abby had a question about if Baby Promise eligibility is tied to the county of residence. And I believe so. Because I asked that same question. I was a little bit confused about and also having lived in an area where it's like, one side of the river is Marion County, the other side Blaine County, and you're all in the same town. But I believe it is tied to the area of residence, and also knowing that there are a lot of families who like commute into Multnomah County for employment. That's another option that some families have is bringing their kids with them and dropping them off at childcare and then picking them up on the way home. But I will have to get confirmation of that as well.
Jennifer, this is Begoña. I have a question about, can you go back to the previous slide if you don't mind?
Yeah.
So it seems that the exemption referral process, for what I look here, could be really daunting, could be really long, but maybe I didn't see that thing as the reason not to get on the slot, that the process is really long or convoluted. So can you explain something about this, the timeline on average, how long does it take from the moment that the enrollment partner identifies the family to the moment that the family can go to the provider, and in how many instances it was so long that that provider no longer had the slot?
Well, the Baby Promise slots are being held for infants and toddlers who are ERDC eligible for this placement. So they wouldn't be able to necessarily fill that slot with like a private pay family that came along in the meantime. I don't have any actual data on how long it's going to take because we haven't started the exemption yet. But really filling out that exemption form, like I said, it's a very simple form. There's not a whole lot of information. It's really going to be about the same as standard ERDC eligibility for anyone else who is applying. I don't see any reason why this would be necessarily a longer process. And like I said, it's already a process that the eligibility workers are used to with the child welfare exemption and having that form come in that allows them to go through and bypass the wait list. Okay. So let's see. I'm just trying to catch up on what was on this slide. Sorry about that. So we do have the waitlist exemption form, and so that was the 860 form that we created. We have been communicating with our enrollment partners and also with other partnering agencies and partner calls just to try and get the word out there that, that there is this change. It is tricky though, because with a regional bypass, that can be very tricky or confusing for people who may think that they qualify or may think that there's something in their area where there's not. We have a similar kind of a similar process with the contracted Head Start and early Head Start partnerships because we don't have those statewide. And so we have been actually this next month at our it's an analyst call with eligibility workers and other ODHS staff. We call it Coffee Chat with Childcare, but we'll be going over the waitlist exemption with staff there and giving them an option to ask questions and make sure that they understand. There will also be a essentially a transmittal outlining the steps and what it is and the why behind it that is going out to staff. And then we are working on like process documents because you saw that little flow chart, but we're working on other resources and things that may be necessary in order to make sure that everybody has the resources they need to get this in place. Okay, well, and we've already, I feel like I've talked this one into the ground, but so it is only in 3 regions. I don't really know the story behind why we have Reedsport in there. So if I find that out, I would love to share that with you guys. But yeah, it is only in those 3 regions and Reedsport. And then we'll have the information and make sure things are updated on our website for those who are the enrollment partners. And then also we've got a talking point sheet that we're creating just for key information and data points and where you can go to get more information on the bypass. Yeah, this is something that it's definitely necessary to maintain the Baby Promise program, but it can be difficult when you're talking about a bypass to a wait list for a program that's really essential for all sorts of our families across the state, and trying to say, you know, why we're adding this exemption as opposed to exempting other populations. It really got to the point where we had to in order to ensure the continued success of the program. And then as far as our rules timeline, we did hold a RAC for this meeting on the 17th. There was some really great participation, some good points that were made. There were, I can't recall how many participants we had. I think we had 15 different participants from different partnering agencies and childcare providers. And essentially we presented it to the Early Learning Council. As I said, it'll be effective on October 16th. We will also have a public hearing. So we're even though we're putting this rule into effect as a temporary rule change, we're still in the process also of getting it ready to be a permanent rule effective January 1st. So there is going to be a public hearing. The public hearing is a little bit different because we can gather feedback or information that people have on the rule changes, but we can't really engage in conversation the way we can in the Rules Advisory Committee or the RAC meeting. And then also we're open for any other format of public comment until the end of this month. December 11th, the Early Learning Council will hold a vote on if they want to pass the rules or not, and then the permanent rule will be effective on January 1st. Okay, and I think that's it for the presentation. I see maybe there are some questions that I couldn't answer. So I'm really glad you're here.
I'm so sorry to be a few minutes late.
Oh,
One of those days, I would be happy to answer questions. I cannot see the chat from before I joined. So someone might have to read them for me.
Yeah, I know one of the questions I wasn't fully sure about is what's the total enrollment for, like, the total number of slots available for Baby Promise? And I know we had about the 70 or so that were going to become vacant and that needed to be filled, but I don't know the total overall number.
The total overall number, let me just add it up here really quick, is it's variable. It's about 210 or so. The providers have in their subcontracts, they have up to a certain amount of slots. It's an up to model, which kind of has some pros and cons to it. One good thing about it is that if a provider is not ready for more than however many infants or toddlers, they don't have to go up to that many slots. It allows them a little flexibility to move up and down in that enrollment number. So, and sometimes that happens.
And I was way off. I was thinking we're around like 140 or so. So the 210.
Well, yeah, and it is kind of it really does vary. It really does.
Yeah. And then another really great question is for families who are participating, do they have to live within those regions or just have some sort of connection to those regions? Like, for example, if someone lives outside of Multnomah County, but they commute to Multnomah County for employment and that's where they want to find their child care, would they be potentially eligible?
That's a really good question. And I don't know the actual real answer. My understanding has been that you have to live in the zip code that Baby Promise covers within those counties. I've kind of tried to ask about who drives that piece. Like, is it a CCR&R sort of regional thing? But I'm not exactly sure. I suppose that if a person was working in one of those regions, maybe they would. I don't know, but I think they have to live in the region where Baby Promise is offered.
I don't know if I missed any other questions.
Really good questions.
Wondering if there are any other questions that aren't in the chat for Jen and Mady. Begonia?
I do have a question. So, hi, Mady. So, school promise providers, when they don't reach a threshold, a cap specified by DILC, they gotta go through an improvement plan, and they have a period of grace to actually be fully enrolled, or at least being hitting that threshold. With this up to approach, how does that thing work?
That's a really good question. The way I think that for Baby Promise, I think as a program, I think really prioritizes, and I'm going to use this term, I don't really like it, but really prioritizes this idea of, that high quality environment and wanting the focus to be on the provider being and the early educators, depending on what kind of setting they are, to be really ready for infants and toddlers. So rather than you have to have this kind of enrollment, it's a little bit more about growing providers who are, adding more children to a classroom or want to. Now, if you have up to 3 slots in your family home, you aren't going to get the additional reimbursement if they're not all 3 enrolled. So, that would be one reason to keep them all enrolled. But it doesn't quite work like that. It's a really good question. And I think that comes from a place of wanting to really be in a growth and development and readiness, and having taken 0 to 3, the early educators need to take 0 to 3 to be baby promise providers, and that none of that can happen super quickly, right? It takes some time. So we don't want to be punitive about enrollment. I don't know if that helps at all, Begonia.
My head is really spinning. You can see it.
Yeah,
Natalie.
it's a, you framed a really good question that has me a little bit answering quickly. And as I think about it, I think it's, baby promise, when it started, I think I wasn't here at the time. I've only been here for about a year and some, but I think some time was spent in seeing how providers were ready for infants and toddlers and what did that look like, and helping them ramp up for infants and toddlers, because it is so different than for preschool aged children. And I think having that up to provided some wiggle room where they can still serve families and get those, extra dollars to help sustain without having to feel that something's going to be taken away if they can't keep that enrollment at a certain number.
Which is what we experience with that preschool promise, that they have to be meeting that threshold, and there's the improvement plan. And if that improvement plan is not successful, then they'll has a conversation or actually reviews that contract and makes a decision about if that provider or specific number of slots will or will not return to that provider. So I was just wondering why the different approach, but thank you.
Thank you. And I think there's other ways to look at it. Like everything we do, there's something about it that doesn't work out for someone, right? And, in the case of the up to slots, it opens the door to a provider saying, well, I'm only going to take infants, or I only want these certain, it opens the door to other things that may not be what we would hope. So I think Baby Promise is growing internally as providers are getting time, years with infants and toddlers, not that they haven't had that before, but working as, being the Baby Promise program. And maybe we do reach a time where enrollment is more like that. It also did, the ERDC waitlist really threw a big old monkey wrench in the whole enrollment situation for Baby Promise, because once children were aging out, we couldn't fill those spots unless we could find a person who was eligible, family that was eligible but unconnected to a provider. So, so that might be something that's one of those things that had great intentions and worked for a while, and then has to change a little bit as time goes on. A really good question.
Any other questions? Jen and Mady, thank you so much. This was such an interesting presentation and conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Thanks, Jen, for taking one for the team. I'll put my email address in the chat too. If anybody has any other questions or wonderings, please don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to answer them. Thanks, Nancy and Maria, for having us.
Thanks, Mady. All right. We wanted to take just a minute for Lindsay to introduce herself to the group and share a little bit about her role. Lindsay?
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. And I recognize some folks from other spaces. Thanks for letting me sit in and take a minute to say hi. I'm Lindsay Baltus, she, her pronouns. I am a new strategic policy and projects coordinator at DELC, which means that I'm going to be supporting some of the key priority projects and work at DELC to put into place some of the systems and processes that we need to fulfill our role in the early learning system. So I've seen you all, some of you in different spaces, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you again. Some of the work that you all I know have been doing with the BUILD initiative to kind of identify core functions of early learning hubs. I'm going to be supporting within DELC kind of implementation of key pieces that come out of that. Again, that DELC needs to have in place to support the work. So I'm sure I'll be seeing more of you. I'm really in a place of just listening and learning more about the work you all are doing in your communities right now. So I've appreciated, getting to see some of you so far and more to come. That's all.
Thanks, Lindsay. Lindsay's been shadowing Maria and I in all of our hub meetings, and it's been great to have her along. It's been it's always nice to introduce folks to Hub World. Thanks, Lindsay. And with that, I think we're wrapping up. And as part of our wrap up, we always like to hear how we can improve our meetings. And that means, providing feedback on our hub meeting form. And I'll just put that in the chat. This survey lives on the portal. So anytime that you have a suggestion for us, a wonder, a question, Maria and I are always looking at the survey, the list of questions in real time. So please share any information and also how we can improve our meetings and make them as relevant for you as possible. Really appreciate your time, and special shout out to Kate for all of her behind the scenes work. Maria, do you have anything you want to share?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll be seeing you soon on our one-on-ones. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.